Okay, where we left off, celebrating the 3rd anniversary. Okay, so my name is Ainars Freimanis, and I'm a policy officer in Director General for Communications Networks, Content and Technology, otherwise known as DG CNECT in the European Commission, working in the team responsible for the Web Accessibility Directive. And with me today also, Nadezhda Harizanova, my colleague in the room here. I'd like to thank International Association of Accessibility Professionals and the European Disability Forum for organizing this important event as every year. And as we gather here to discuss today the web accessibility and the crucial role it plays in creating a more inclusive and digital society, your organizations representing both people with disabilities and professionals working on digital accessibility play a vital role in shaping policy and advancing the cause of accessibility in Europe. So thank you for inviting me here today. So as we all know, accessibility is not only a matter of social inclusion and human rights, but also a key driver for the development of knowledge-based economy and economic growth in Europe. This year we celebrate markedly also a 30th anniversary of the European Single Market, and the WAD, or the Web Accessibility Directive, is also an internal market directive. It is not only to improve the web accessibility, but also the internal market by harmonizing the underlying standards and fostering digitalization. So today I will provide you with a brief overview of the current status of the directive, some updates of what's going on and plans for the near future. Also, I will look briefly at the relationship between the WAD, the Accessibility Directive, and another directive known as the European Accessibility Act, or the IAAP, and eventually on the importance of skills development in this area. So first, let us discuss the current state of play under the directive. So it is 3 years since the directive applies to all public sector websites and 2.5 years that it applies to all public sector mobile apps. Last year, the Commission published a study on the review of the directive and made available the first set of member state monitoring reports on the accessibility of their websites and mobile apps. Now we are in the second monitoring period where member states continue that work to assess digital accessibility in the public sector, with the next report to the Commission due in December next year, 2024. Between then and now, we observe the progress started perhaps slowly, but is picking up surely. The implementation of the WAD has led to improvements in accessibility of websites and mobile applications to some degree. So how do we know? Well, from the member state monitoring reports, from talking to you, from various projects and studies in this area. For example, according to the 2022 e-government benchmark report that looks at many indicators, there's also a pilot on accessibility. And they found last year that 16% of evaluated 15,000 e-government websites across Europe passed all of the selected accessibility criteria. They tested only 8 of the WCAG 50 criteria. While this figure may seem low, it is important to note that the conformance rate per specific criterion was more encouraging, with 76 to 99% conforming or checks passing, and that despite the limitations of such tests anyway regarding the full website or user experience. What they found as well is that contrast and alt text scored lowest, while area hidden scored highest conformance, suggesting that some criteria are better or more easily implemented than others. Although it is not an exhaustive and comprehensive test, but if conducted and repeated over time, this result gives us some insight where the trends are. And we're looking out for the new 2023 e-government benchmark report, which is expected by the end of this month. And we are eager to see what progress has been made since by using the same tests and probably on the same set of websites or the domains that they're looking at. Now, we must acknowledge that there is still much work to be done. We've also learned in the past 3 years or more that accessibility is a process. It's not a one-off exercise. something that was echoed a lot also yesterday in the workshops. But what we noticed that what is also showing much appreciated spillover effects. We are seeing digital inclusion embedded in various European policies and instruments. And accessibility, we can say for sure, is no longer a niche subject. And I'll give you 3 examples of that recently happening. First, the Commission itself, though not formally bound by the directive, for its own web presence has adopted an action plan on accessibility last year and updated its web guide on accessibility to align with the directive, much so like the member states do. So the Commission websites are now being improved with accessibility in mind and provide accessibility statements as required in the directive. Other resources, including the Commission's web guide and the publications of its vast training material on accessibility, are all publicly available and free of charge. Second, and this is somewhat new also to me, a so-called single digital gateway available through Your Europe web portal is one of the most ambitious EU e-government initiatives to digitalize public administration. It helps reduce administrative burden for business, citizens, and authorities. So through that portal, which is a gateway, for example, you have a one-stop shop that provides citizens and businesses with fully digitalized administrative procedures. The gateway has become ever more accessible and visible and multilingual. Basically, it simplifies the daily life of citizens in many areas like traveling, work and retirement, education, family rights, and healthcare, which are all crucial to make the most of their free movement rights, especially in a cross-border context. And last, the third example I'd like to give is investments in digital overall. In her State of the Union address last week, the President of the Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, highlighted, and now I quote it, "It is telling that we have far overshot the 20% investment target in digital projects of next generation EU. Member states have used that investment to digitize their healthcare, justice system, and transport network," she said. So in WAD team, on our side, we observe that member states are maximizing the opportunities of this investment by actively seeking partnerships in other member states, seeking know-how, and how to team up with their European colleagues to work on a very topical theme now, artificial intelligence and accessibility. So that's a little bit on the current sort of developments and status. And now looking ahead to the near future, and what are the Commission's plans for promoting web accessibility. First, specifically under the WAD, we're happy to have an active member state expert group. We work closely with member states to ensure that the WAD is effectively implemented and enforced. This includes collaborating with national authorities to address any gaps, but above all, help sharing best practices, as now we are in this application and implementation phase. Who does what and how, and what are the good best practices that we can share and learn from each other? In fact, the themes and topics of those meetings are very much aligned to those discussed yesterday and here today. And by the way, we are transparent about it. The minutes and outcome of those meetings are all publicly available. I can give the links or put it in the chat later on if anybody's interested. So the second is a cross-section between accessibility and languages. We recognize the importance of language accessibility in our diverse European Union. To this end, the language services in the Commission, together with member states, work hard to ensure that public sector online content is also available in all EU languages, in particular the lesser resourced ones. So the Commission continues to support research and development in this area, and it includes exploring the potential of artificial intelligence and machine learning technologies to improve digital accessibility. From producing easier to read texts at the push of a button, to devising conversational user interfaces more suited for the elderly. All these language technologies offer a huge potential for many users to have a better and more accessible digital experience. For example, according to a survey of 165 respondents, 98% of them watch videos with closed captions turned on. On a personal note, I certainly do. And I've even grown so much accustomed to it that I wish there was closed caption service for all audiovisual media, including newsreels. But unfortunately, at the moment, I can do so only in the major languages such as English and not in Latvian, which is my mother tongue. And the last example, and I hope you will find it very welcome, is recent developments on the digital wallet. This initiative aims to provide European citizens with a secure and user-friendly digital identity solution, enabling them to access public and private services online. There was a review also of the IDAS regulation, and this is what they found, and that's why how they made the changes for the future. As it stands today, only approximately 60% of EU population in 14 member states have the ability to use their national electronic ID across borders. The European digital identity, agreed upon in June this year, will be available to all EU citizens, residents, and businesses who wish to identify themselves or to verify certain personal information. And it will be applicable to both online and offline public and private services across the EU. So the citizens and residents will be entitled to a so-called personal digital wallet. Now comes the catchy part. The digital wallet must be designed to be accessible to all users, including those with disabilities. And it is expected to comply with accessibility requirements set out in the European Accessibility Act. The wording, and bear with me here on the technicalities, in the proposal for amendments of the original 2014 IDAS regulation regarding accessibility is now very clear. It now requires that the provision of trust services and end-user products, rather than where feasible, as it was before, shall be made accessible for persons with disabilities in accordance with the accessibility requirements of Annex 1 of the Accessibility Act. So it shall be made, and it even actually tells how it shall be made accessible. So this is still a proposal stage, has been agreed at the Commission, and I hope it will be soon a law. On a sort of my subjective side note, thinking about this, it is a big step and it's very important in itself, but also I think it has a great potential to reduce cognitive load. For example, instead of trying to come up with a unique, an original password and authentication every time you use a new service, you can now use or will be able to use a personal digital wallet and your load will just get lighter. So this brings me to the WAD and its connection with the Accessibility Act. What are the main differences? And perhaps especially with regard to monitoring and enforcement. So while these two directives, pieces of legislation, have different scopes and objectives, they both share the common goal of promoting accessibility, obviously, and inclusion for persons with disabilities in the digital sphere. So while we celebrate the 3rd anniversary of WAD today, by now the Accessibility Act must be transposed in all member states, but it's due to enter into practical application in 2 years' time, in 2025. So here a small tip how to navigate EU complex legislation. On Eurolex, Commission started publishing so-called legislative summaries, human-made in all languages, 1-pagers, 2-pagers, really condensing you in a good storyline. What is the directive about? What are the main obligations and where you can read more? I welcome you to sort of next time you find a directive or a regulation, check if it has a summary. So both directives, same goal. They're both part of the broader European strategy for the rights of persons with disabilities. And both are based on the principles of United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, which the European Union has ratified itself. So the similarities are improve accessibility, promote equal participation, and social inclusion. Also, they both set out accessibility requirements based on the principles of perceivability, operability, understandability, and robustness. Those we all know. And here comes the differences. So the WAD, this directive discussing today, focuses specifically on public sector websites and mobile apps, while the Accessibility Act covers a broader range of digital products and services in the internal market, for example, computers, smartphones, e-books, e-commerce, as well as transport and banking services. And that includes also websites and apps that lead to those services. So the WAD applies to public sector bodies, while the Accessibility Act applies to economic operators providing those products and services. And we think that's a big difference. The WAD requires member states to establish monitoring bodies and enforcement procedure to guarantee compliance. The Accessibility Act is different in this regard. It focuses on the conformity of products and services itself, with member states ensuring availability of effective enforcement. And for example, last year, so this means that the EEA will be, the enforcement of the Accessibility Act will be carried out by national market surveillance authorities, which are responsible for ensuring that products and services comply with the relevant requirements. And the enforcement mechanism under the Accessibility Act includes also the provision for consumers to take action before courts or competent administrative bodies. So that's quite a bit different approach. It's really more a market directive, unlike the Accessibility Directive, where public sector bodies are themselves in charge of making sure things are good, and another public sector body sort of having an eye on that if that's indeed true. So also relevant for both directives, the work is ongoing for the underlying standard and harmonizing the EN 301549. It will continue to apply to WADs, and in due time will also encompass the Accessibility Act. But there is one thing that's both legal texts create and in demand for, and that's professional expertise. A demand that already is that already outstrips supply now. So in the European Year of Skills, this particular digital skill is something we want to emphasize and encourage. And now I'm moving on. And if there are questions in the chat about these two, happy to respond later. So last but not least, few remarks about digital skills. So we acknowledge the challenges we have faced in implementing the WAD, and one of the main issues that we've been hearing over and over again is the shortage of digital accessibility experts in both public and private sectors. And this is making it difficult for public sector bodies to procure accessible solutions or recruit experts. But this year, it's marked as the European Year of Skills. The objective of that is for everyone, governments, companies, and businesses, and individuals to recognize how important training is and to become more active in that. As part of the 21-27, so this budgetary cycle, around 65 billion euros in European funds are available to member states to invest in skills programs, mostly through the Recovery and Resilience Facility and the European Social Fund Plus schemes. In April this year, the Commission adopted 2 new proposals specifically on skills. And there's a Council recommendations on digital skills and another one on digital education and training. And we are very happy that actually accessibility and skills in digital accessibility are both mentioned in those recommendations. I'm going to skip about Erasmus Plus budget, but that's also seen the largest envelope ever to about 4.4 billion. And as we know, there are many really worthwhile accessibility projects being funded also through Erasmus Plus. So I'm close to the end, and one of the last mentions is the so-called Digital Decade Policy Program. The first reports with the targets and KPIs where we're going will be published at the end of September. It is a monitoring and cooperation mechanism for EU and its member states to work together in achieving the Digital Decade targets and objectives. And these are measurable goals in 4 areas: connectivity, digital skills, digital business, and digital public services. The aim of the program is improve citizens' basic and advanced digital skills, improve the take-up of new technologies in the EU by small businesses, by large businesses, by all stakeholders, like artificial intelligence, data and cloud, to further advance EU's connectivity, computing and data infrastructure, and above all, for our interest, make public services and administration available online. So by 2030, in 7 years' time, 100% key public services to be online which also means they must be accessible. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. And speaking on skills and experts, one of the digital decade targets is to increase from starting point of around 8 million ICT professionals in EU around 2021, that data comes to 20 million at the end of the decade, so by 2030. And with that, I'll conclude. I'll just say the European Commission remains committed to promoting web accessibility and ensuring that all citizens can fully participate in our digital society. And we're committed also to learning from experience and from the feedback we're getting from users and stakeholders to improve accessibility across the board. Together, we can continue to break down barriers and create a more inclusive and accessible Europe. I wish us all a productive and insightful event today. Thank you.
So thank you, Ainars, for that. We have got some questions in the chat and also in the Q&A, and I would like to ask everyone who is posing questions to use the Q&A, please, because it becomes very difficult for me if I have to look into places. So please use the Q&A function. And of course, in the room, if you would like to ask a question, one of my colleagues will run around with a microphone for you. So the first question we got was about penalties. In the Accessibility Act, there are possibilities for the member states to actually fine or take products off market even. So that's kind of a strong enforcement procedure. Is there anything like that foreseen in the directive moving forward? Is there anything that the Commission could consider, maybe also adding a little bit of money part to that?
Could always consider what we know at the moment. So the directive is quite open. It says member states must ensure effective enforcement, but it's up to them how they do because the procedures differ. From the 27 member states, we know 7 member states have in their laws written a possibility of penalties, but we haven't seen or heard much that they've been applied in practice. There a bit more as singular cases are coming out every now and then, but typically it's not been a tool that's been very much used at the moment. And after the review that published last year, it is an issue, but it was not sort of, at the moment, the Commission was not considering reopening the directive itself, but really looking more at the other areas where it can improve practical application and implementation. But I think also the reason why is that the public sector is not keen to find each other, which is kind of different when you talk about market forces and companies doing and sort of product liability, so to say.
That's true, but it's the question came in the chat, and we've heard it many times before, so I thought it was interesting to just share with the audience. And another question is slightly more technical, but when evaluating accessibility, so having the automatic tools, there may be a question about many of those tools being not from the EU. So maybe where is the data stored and all of that? Could maybe the Commission try to list some kind of tool list where public sector would know that these are okay to use or something? I'm now summarizing a little bit this, but yeah.
That's a good question. Indeed. So we've seen also there's a slight increase in European providers that provide accessibility services, but obviously some of the big names come from outside EU jurisdiction, but have branches and so on. I'm sure the rules also require to have data centers and servers in Europe. There is a list on the W3C website. Many of the projects that are run or where W3C participate are actually also co-funded from the European funds. Just to mention, one is Y Tools and Y Coop. There are lists of those, but they're not exclusively European products. They're sort of global products. And I think at this stage, the Commission doesn't want to sort of be very prescriptive about the technologies you use. Sort of there's a famous phrase in the directive, in the preamble, is to foster innovation and developments. I think there's still a lot to be done in this regard in terms when it comes to tools, automated tools and technologies that can be helpful en masse on a large scale. But no, there's no prescriptive list of EU tools only. Yeah.
But we talked about it yesterday to have a list of kind of approved tools or something, but this was another angle when it comes to
Yeah.
the GDPR, and I think that was
I think
it's an interesting question.
it's certainly if it's useful, and especially as we sort of seeing that some are faster, some member states are doing better. They know actually what's out there. They have their own tools. Some monitoring agencies develop their own methods and tools and whatnot. But to have a list, if it's useful for public sector bodies, for example, in municipalities or in regions, why not? I think it's a good question, a good, can be turned into a recommendation.
Yeah. Okay, so do we have any questions from the audience here on site in Brussels? No, everything was perfectly clear, so that's good.
Thanks.
So, so just the last one, and this is not maybe not a real question, more of a statement, but why is the Eurolex website so inaccessible? I know that's not your website, but
Yeah.
but still, you were promoting it, so.
I haven't seen the latest tests, but what I've known, and we really welcome in our team, the Commission's action plan until 2025. And I'm sure Eurolex is, it's one of, if not the face of EU, but it's one of the main portals. They have great accessibility team to ensure digital publications are accessible. It's about, but I can't tell you if it's and how, but I'm sure they're really doing all they can when it comes to billions of pages and PDFs and HTMLs with a legal value, with signatures. It's a bit of a challenge compared to a regular website.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. I know that from the standardization standpoint, we also struggle with that. So yes, but anyway, thank you very much, Ainars. Thank you for being here and thank you for sharing all this information. And I think you promised to send some links because we also had questions about, you mentioned a lot of
Yeah.
numbers. So if you could share
Okay.
that would be perfect. Thank you very much.
I'll prepare that during the day. Thanks.
Thank you.